The federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs heading into its third week tomorrow. About a dozen people taking the stand so far as prosecutors work to prove the music mogul is guilty of charges that include racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. Combs has pleaded not guilty. Jeremy Saland joins us now. He's a criminal defense attorney and former Manhattan prosecutor. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us this evening. So as the third week of the trial gets underway, the next witness expected to testify is another one of Combs's former personal assistants, her name Capricorn Clark. That name has already come up during previous testimony. What do we expect to hear from her?
You know, what they're all going to go down to is really three things. And that's corroboration, and guess what? Corroboration. And what she's going to testify to is some of the things that she was told or some of the things that she saw. But it's not just corroborating Cassie that's important, maybe the injuries and the threats against her. But it's also, if you remember, Kid Cudi even testified about her being taken to, against her will, supposedly, to his house when there was that break-in where things were rearranged. And then later on, we heard about other much more violent acts in terms of his car and things like that, and his dog being tied up, or pardon me, put away elsewhere. So she corroborates, because you can't just rely on Cassie and Cassie alone. You need more, and she's going to hopefully be someone they can really value.
Let's talk a little bit about the testimony that we heard from Cassie Ventura, because, you know, as you noted, she's a name a lot of people know at this point. That is Sean Combs' ex-girlfriend. She was put on the stand by prosecutors pretty early, and ultimately what they are trying to do is use her testimony in part to prove that she was forced and coerced into participating with these so-called freak-offs. But some legal analysts that we have spoken to, they have said that testimony alone is not necessarily enough to convict him on the specific charges he faces. Do you agree thus far, and where do you think prosecutors need to go next if they are going to prove for an entire jury the charges that we see on our screens here that Sean Diddy Combs is facing?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say that there more needs to be done. This is not whether or not, did he beat her and did these horrible assaultive type acts, which in and of themselves may be sort of misdemeanor or even felony crimes on the state level. The question is there that force? Is there coercion? Is there that fraud for that sex trafficking? I think that's an easier lift. But when you're thinking about the conspiracy for the RICO, what is this criminal enterprise? Certainly, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, meaning you can have a legitimate company in music and in clothing and in alcohol like he did, and you could have an illegitimate company or enterprise which was trafficking and bringing in these people, these men and women, for the sexual, sexual parties, these freak-offs. But they're not there yet. And I don't know if it's as much as the defense poking holes in the story. I don't think the prosecution has laid it out yet. And I would say this. People want to watch this kind of like the Knicks and Pacers. It's scoring back and forth. But you're not really even beyond that first or second quarter. There's a lot more evidence to come. Right now, they're not there. That doesn't mean they won't be.
So far, and I'll ask you to tell us this for both the defense and the prosecution, what has been the strongest piece of evidence or strongest moment in cross for either side?
You know, so I'll take for cross from the defense first. I think they did some good hits in really trying to show that there might be an agenda here. Yes, we have Cassie, who is the pregnant woman on the stand, but we've got to look at Cassie when she was in her 20s. Is this a money grab? Is there an agenda here? She came back voluntarily. No one forced the drugs in her system. She was engaging in these freak-offs and said at times she enjoyed them and wanted to participate in them. That's really powerful things. And the prosecution started off with a bang, but I'd say cautiously, because when you're coming out so powerfully, you also don't want to make the jury sort of conflate this horrible video that they saw with what ultimately is what they have to prove, and it's beyond that. So I think the prosecution is doing what they need to bring in all the ancillary players to show that there was this scheme to really control and traffic in these people. But there's so much more to come. I'm looking forward to it, as crazy as that might sound in such a horrible situation. But I think they both have done a good job, but I think the prosecution has yet to fulfill their obligation of proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
So if you're the defense at this point, how are you feeling, and what do you plan to do when the case is turned over to you?
Yeah, I'm feeling relatively good, but you can win a battle and lose the war. And what I mean by that is even if they're successful on that potential life sentence on the back end of that RICO charge, they're still facing 15 years plus on the sex trafficking and up to 10 years on the other charge. So he's not a young guy. So you may be feeling good about where it's going. You're doing your job. It hasn't been present by the prosecution, but I would still be making those holes and showing there's an agenda. There might be force in some ways, but it's not force in the concept of this criminal enterprise or in the trafficking. These people came voluntarily.
Jeremy Saland, thank you. We appreciate it.
My
We're back in a moment with the summer travel